Welcome back to All About Winning Daily Fantasy Sports. My name is Ty Patton. The playoffs have kicked off with the Saturday slate, and now it's time to look at the Sunday games. In this video, I will share my research and strategy for the Showdown contest that features the 10-6 Minnesota Vikings visiting the NFC South champion New Orleans Saints, who come in with a record of 13-3. The Saints opened up as a 7-point favorite, and the line has moved back and forth between 7.5 and 8. And at the time of this video, the line has the Saints favored by 8. The game total opened at 47 points and has risen steadily and now sits at 49.5. Now, before we unpack this game, I want to share the numbers that are fantasy relevant to the Showdown contest. There were 121 Showdown contests throughout the 2019 NFL season, including last Sunday's Seattle-San Francisco game. These Showdown contests have an average winning score of 132.10, with an average winning captain score of 42.67. Since the average captain score represents 32% of the average winning score, I focus a lot of attention to the captain's position. With that being said, the captain's position breaks down as follows through those 121 contests. The underdog running back has been the captain for the winning lineup more than any other position 23 times for 19%. And you can add one more to that tonight, Derrick Henry, as they eliminated New England. The favorite quarterback has been the captain in the winning lineup 22 times for 18%. The favored wide receiver 21 times for 17%. The favored running back has been the captain in the winning lineup 16 times for 13%. The underdog wide receiver 15 times for 12%. The underdog quarterback has been the captain in the winning lineup 9 times for 7%. The favorite defensive special teams has been the captain in the winning lineup 6 times for 5%. The underdog tight end has been the captain in the winning lineup 3 times for 2%. The underdog kicker 2 times for 2%. The favorite tight end has been the captain in the winning lineup 2 times for 2%. And the underdog defensive special teams has been the captain in the winning lineup 2 times for 2%. Now, I also combine this by positions, whether they were favored or not, and it breaks down as follows. Running backs have been the captain in the winning lineup more than any other position 39 times for 32%. Wide receivers are close behind at 36 times for 30%. Quarterbacks have been the captain in the winning lineup 31 times for 26%. All others represent 15 times in the winning winning captain spot for 12%. Another statistic that I like to look at is the overall won-loss record of the captain for the winning lineup. And the captain in the winning lineup, their teams are 86 wins and 35 losses, which is a 71% win percentage, which means the captain comes from the winning lineup, or the captain in the winning lineup comes from the winning team 71% of the time. And I broke that down by positions as well. Running backs are 30 wins and 9 losses for a win percentage of 77%. Wide receivers, 22 wins and 14 losses for 61%. And quarterbacks are 23 wins and 8 losses for 74%. Now, do these numbers unlock the winning lineup for the Saints-Vikings game? Absolutely not. But what they do provide us are numbers that we can use as our overall process and give us a little bit of an edge, which in the end, that's all we're looking for is an edge. Some of the main takeaways from these, obviously, is running backs appear in the captain's spot for the winning lineup more than any other position, 32% of the time. The underdog running back appears in the captain's spot more than any position, 19% of the time. And the captain comes from the winning team 71% of the time. Those are some numbers that you can use in your overall process. And my overall process involves, I use these numbers, and the first thing I do after that is I take a stand. Who I think is going to win the game? How are they going to win the game? What are the matchups? How are they going to attack the other team? Passing game, running game. Where are the weaknesses, and how will they expose those weaknesses? And then I develop a pool of players that I feel support that game theory to project them, or propel them into winning the game. And from that group of players, I select between 4 and 6 players that I feel have a path to being the highest scoring players in this game. And then I build my lineups around that player. And I do a lot of correlation. Some things I do if I have a quarterback in the captain spot, I like to have at least 2 targets in the flex spot. If I have a wide receiver in the captain spot, I want to have his quarterback in the flex spot. There's only one way that wide receiver goes off, and that's if the quarterback throws him the ball. And those are just some of the correlations that I use. I like to correlate running backs with defenses, and that's how I build my lineups. And then on the other side, you always have to have a player or two from the other team who, if you think this team is going to be winning, who will be the players that would be trying to come back, or offer some points. And I just build my lineup that way. If I think it's going to be a shootout, I try to use players from both teams that I think have a path to scoring a lot of points. I've never won one of these showdown contests. I have cashed in a lot of them. I'd say I have an 85 to 90% cash percentage. And cash to me means I won more than I played, not just breaking even. So I believe in my process, and I know that one day I'll take one of these big slates down utilizing my process. Now, these two teams, they last met in Week 8 of the 2018 season. The Saints won that game 30-20 behind Alvin Kamara's 45 rushing yards on 13 carries. He also had 2 touchdowns, and he added 7 receptions for another 31 yards. Kirk Cousins in this game threw for 359 yards on 31 of 41 passing and had 2 touchdowns. And one interesting statistic to go along with Kirk Cousins is Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen each had 100 yards receiving and a touchdown in that game. Ironically, Latavius Murray was the running back for Minnesota, as Minnesota was without running back Dalvin Cook. Murray is now backing up Kamara, and Cook is reportedly healthy and ready to go tomorrow for Minnesota. So that'll be a big difference from the game last year. The biggest mismatch on paper is wide receiver Michael Thomas, who will be matched up against cornerback Xavier Rhodes for most of the day, and really it doesn't matter who he's going to be matched up against. Thomas is matchup proof with his record-setting 145 receptions on 1,688 yards, and he also has a 32% target share for New Orleans, and he had 9 touchdowns this year. Rhodes, for Minnesota, has allowed a 127.8 quarterback rating. On 70 receptions, he gives up an average of 12 yards per reception, and he's given up 4 touchdowns this year. The Vikings would like to get running back Dalvin Cook going, but the Saints have a number 6 DVP versus the running back position. While the Vikings have a number 26 DVP ranking versus the wide receiver position, you don't want to miss the fact that the Saints' weakness is their pass defense, and they have a number 27 DVP ranking versus the wide receiver position. And with one of the mismatches for them is going to be Adam Thielen versus Eli Apple. That's going to be a real interesting matchup, and that a lot of people will probably shy away from Stephon Diggs because of Marshawn Lattimore. I think Diggs will get his too, but I think Thielen could be really sneaky in this matchup. With both these teams being susceptible to the pass, it makes sense that this game would have the highest total of the entire 4 games this weekend, sitting at 49.5 points. I do like the Saints in this game at home. The Vikings don't give up big plays, but the Saints don't mind dinking and dunking up and down the field. Michael Thomas doesn't run many deep routes. He gets a ton of targets, 12 of 15 yards, a catch, and before you know it, he's got 12 receptions, 140 yards, and a touchdown. Even if he doesn't get a touchdown, 12 receptions and 120 yards is 27 points without a touchdown, and he doesn't have very many bad games. He had a bad game last weekend against Carolina. He only had 7 points. Those are far and few between. He does have a little bit of a hand injury, but he doesn't have an injury designation as of now. And I just don't know how you get away from putting this guy in the captain's position. I don't know if he'll be I'm going to be using him. I'll show you that lineup here shortly. I don't know if he'll be the highest scoring, but I would venture to say that of all the lineups I build, I will probably have him either in the captain's position or the flex position. I don't see myself fading Michael Thomas. If something happens, he does, and I'll live to play next weekend. So with that being said, and utilizing these numbers, this is the lineup that I like and that I'm working on. My first stance is I believe the Saints are going to win. So I want a player from the Saints. The player that I think that has the biggest matchup is Michael Thomas. And he's really expensive in this flex spot. Or in the captain spot, I just don't know how you get away from him. When I have a wide receiver up here, I like to use their quarterback, so I'm going to put Breeze in there. An interesting move would be to not have Breeze, and put Cousins in there and match him up with, and you'll see the rest of this lineup, but we'll talk about that when we get there. I'm also going to give Breeze another target, Jared Cook, and I don't know how sneaky he is. A lot of people that know anything about the Saints, Taysom Hill, they'll have some packages in this game, whether he throws the ball, catches the ball, runs the ball, gadget play, he'll be involved somewhere. And at 2,000, it doesn't take much for him to get value, and I really like him at that price, and it allows you to do more with this lineup. So that leaves me 10,400. I'm going to go up, and I'm going to get one of those targets. I'm going to get Thielen. I feel like he does have the best matchup between him and Diggs. And that leaves me 3,000. And I'm going to go down here to this guy, Irv Smith. He gets at least 3 targets a game. He gets a lot of red zone looks from Cousins. And I like this lineup a lot. And I left 1,600 on the table, which in Showdown is a good thing. The average winning lineup in Showdown contests has left just over $1,000 on the table this year, and I really like this. I don't know how contrarian it'll be with Thomas in there. That's what's going to be interesting to see what the eventual winning lineup is. I hope it's this one, and but that's how I put my lineups together. I correlated Breeze and Cook up here, threw in Taysom Hill. I don't feel like he is a total risk. I know they will have a few packages for him, and then I have Thielen and another target up here. What I was talking about earlier is if you took Breeze and then you plugged in Cousins, because in that game last year that New Orleans won 30-20. Breeze only had 8 fantasy points in that game because Kamara did a lot of the work, and but Cousins had 359 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. So this would, and then what you could do, and this is how I do my lineups. You could actually get Jared Cook out of there, and I don't know if you could make that happen. Yeah, you could do that too. And that would leave 3,000. And you got Cousins with Thielen and Smith. And you could come down here and you could still get Taysom Hill and have 1,000. And that's how I'll probably use this lineup too. Now, I don't MME, meaning I don't play 150 lineups. I don't have anything against anybody that does. I'm just not in the position to do that. I'll play the 25-cent entry or the $21 entries, some of the larger GPPs, and I spread out, my lineups across some different contests. I'll play some double up, some head-to-head, 50-50, and do it like that. But what I just showed you there with plugging, I actually like this lineup too, the more I look at it. And you can see a situation where Thomas could get his without Breeze having to have a big game. If Thomas gets uh, 10 catches for 120 yards and doesn't get in the end zone, and Kamara gets in the end zone, and Taysom Hill maybe throws a touchdown pass down there on a gadget play. And that's what you do. You develop a game script, and then you just build around it. And you got Cousins throwing to Thielen and Smith. Um, you could take Taysom Hill out and probably put Rudolph in. I think Smith's kind of sneaky. And if they're in comeback mode, why not? And so I really like this lineup too. So as I always do, whether I'm building lineups for the main slate or Showdown, I always utilize an optimizer that I have from a paid site. I set my optimizer for 150 lineups. Um, I on Showdown I don't use very many rules at all. A couple rules that I use are what I just talked about. Is I have a quarterback in the captain, I want 2 targets in the flex. If I have a wide receiver in the captain, I want his quarterback in the flex. And then I just let it go. I try to only use one of the 4 between the 2 defensive special teams and 2 field goal kickers. Field goal kickers offer a safer floor, and I generally try to use the field goal kicker that's home or the field goal kicker that is supposed to win, because they have obviously the highest implied total, which means they're going to score the most points, which means that makes sense to use the field goal kicker from the team that's going to score the most points. That's just how I do it. And I set it for 150 lineups. I use one unique player. Each lineup has to have at least one different player, obviously. And I let it go. And on this, when I did it tonight for this one, it gave me 128 out of 150. I rarely get 150 because I on this particular game, I think I had 6 captains, 4 from the Saints and 2 from Minnesota. And I set the minimum maximum exposures on the captains, and then I set all the minimum maximum exposures on the flex positions as well. Like the guys down at the bottom, I don't want them appearing in 20% of the lineups. I might put like between 1 and 5% or 3 to 6%, and then I work my way up. And obviously Michael Thomas, I had him in probably in between the captain and the flex position. I probably had him in 80% of the lineups. I just don't know how you get away from him, and I let it go. And the main reason is I want to see the different randomizations of the players that I like. And if I'm building manual lineups, I'm not going to see all the different randomizations. And I just go through and I look at them. And like I said, if I'm in a 20 entry or something, I'll go through and I'll pick out the ones I like. Sometimes I pick the right ones, sometimes I don't. But I do have a really high cash percentage, as I mentioned on Showdown, and I do believe in my process. So I'm going to show you guys a couple lineups that were generated from the optimizer, and then I'll get out of here and get the last game for tomorrow posted for you guys too. So it had the very first one had obviously Michael Thomas in the captain. It had Irv Smith in the flex. It had kicker Dan Bailey. It also had kicker Lutz. It had Alvin Kamara. And it had Drew Brees. So that's interesting. I mean, you got Smith and Bailey. It's kind of a ugly lineup for Minnesota. This is a total New Orleans domination. But you never know. Anything can happen in Showdown. But that left 400 on the table. Probably not too contrarian. And then another thing that I do when I'm looking at these different randomized lineups is I'll move. Sometimes I'll look at it and say, well, I don't really want 2 field goal kickers, so take that out, and then that leaves me 4,200, and maybe I'll put Taysom Hill in or Ted Ginn Jr. in or something like. Now, sometimes that works for me. Sometimes it's not worked for me, and it would have been best to have left it alone. But that was the first one. And the second one was this one. I thought this one was pretty interesting as well. It had Breeze, and had Irv Smith again. I guess Irv Smith's popular with this because it allows you to do a lot of the different things. It also had Rudolph, which I'm not too crazy about double tight end. And then on Showdown, when I'm using Optimizer, I won't allow it to give me two tight ends from the same team, or on main slate, I won't allow it to give me two tight ends. But on Showdown, I don't put but just a couple rules in, so it gives me two tight ends. It gives me Lutz, Kamara, and of course Thomas. And that left 200 on the table. And that's pretty interesting. You got Breeze, you got a couple targets there in Kamara and Thomas, and not much coming back for the Vikings. You got double tight end there. That'd probably be, this lineup would definitely be contrarian, even though it only left 200 on the table. Double tight end like that. But like I said, you never know. It's some of the weirdest, ugliest lineups that win these things, and then sometimes it's some of the most obvious things. The New England game tonight, I guess it was really obvious that you should have had Derrick Henry in your captain spot. I wasn't going there. I missed the boat. I didn't think the Patriots were done, but they're definitely done this year. So I want to thank you guys for joining me. I encourage you to please drop any opinions or comments that you may have below. I try to answer them. And if I don't know the answer to something, I'll get back to you. Please share this video, like it, subscribe if you're not a subscriber, and hit that notification bell so you get notified when my next video posts. My subscribers finally went over 100. This channel has definitely exceeded my expectations this year, my first year, and I actually started like the second or third week, and it's grown. My viewers have went way up. I really appreciate that. If you're not a subscriber already, please subscribe. It's free. I got some really good information, and just give me a chance. I really appreciate it. And this channel has grown and become what it has because of you guys, and I can't thank you enough for helping it grow. I will have the Showdown video for the Seahawks-Eagles game shortly after this one, or maybe I'll post it first thing in the morning because it is getting late, and that's the later game in the afternoon. And then I'm going to update these showdowns, and I'm going to do a comparison of what the regular season was and what the playoffs was for the first weekend, and see if there's many differences for the showdown videos that I do next weekend as well, plus the 4-game slate. So good luck. Don't forget to check the injury report tomorrow at 11:30 in the morning. Even if a player doesn't have an injury designation, always check that just in case. You can follow me on Twitter at winningabout. I try to put any news information that I find, or any updates, injury information, or anything like that. I try to update that as well. Again, thank you for joining me. I'll see you again shortly. Good luck tomorrow. My name is Ty Patton. This is all about winning daily fantasy sports. Good night.